For this offering that has been given and has been received by the children. We're grateful for it, and we are just asking that it will be used to help people who really need it, children and their families in this area and wherever it might be. Amen. All right. Got a little story today. Kind of started the story of Moses last week. If you remember, he was drawn out of the water by Pharaoh's daughter, and then he grew up to be a great man and second in command in all of Egypt. But then he had to run away, and the Lord sent him back to free his people. And so this is a story. Can anybody read what that says? It looks like plagues, but it's not plagues. Plagues. That means, oh, these bad things happen. So we'll read this story. Are there any things that you see? Frogs. Lots of frogs. Yeah, they're smiling though. They're happy little frogs. What does frog stand for? There's something that the children are learning.
Fully rely on God.
Fully rely on God. It's downstairs on their board. Fire and lightning and hail. Yeah. Okay, here we go. God sent Moses and his brother Aaron to ask the king of Egypt, who was Pharaoh, to let the Hebrews go free. But Pharaoh refused. So God sent a series, that means a whole bunch, of plagues upon the Egyptians, each more terrible than the last. He changed the waters of the Nile into blood, so that all the fish died and the air stank. You ever smell a whole bunch of dead fish? Yeah. I remember when we used to go to Lakeside, when I was first a minister, the lake was very unclean. It was very dirty, and all these dead fish, hundreds of them just floating by the dock. And the lake's pretty much cleaned up now. Maybe you see one or two dead fish once in a while, but not like they used to be. And then he sent a plague of frogs. Here they are. Hop, hop, hop. Hopping into every nook and cranny. Gnats, flies, animal sickness, and boils all followed, one after the other. But still Pharaoh wouldn't change his mind. Next came thunder and heavy hail, which stripped the land of its crops, while lightning struck again and again and fires blazed. Then came a swarm of locusts. Anybody know what locusts are?
They're these bugs that live on trees, and they make these loud noises.
Yeah. What were you going to say? Oh, okay. What kind of noises do they make? That's about the time you hear them. When I'm sawing logs, that's when they're making their all those cool noises. Anyhow, I better get back to the story. Swarms of locusts, and they devour the crops too. Anything left they would eat, and then they get on the trees. Nothing green remained in all of Egypt. After this, God sent total darkness for 3 whole days. But then the time had come for the most dreadful plague of all. Moses warned Pharaoh that God would pass through the country at midnight, and every firstborn son in the land would die, from the son of Pharaoh himself to the son of the lowliest slave girl, and even the firstborn of all the animals as well. But Pharaoh still would not listen. Moses told his people that each family must kill a lamb and smear the blood on the doorframe and eat the meat in a special way. We call this the Passover. The next day the land was filled with the sound of mourning and crying, for all the firstborn sons had died, even Pharaoh's sons. But God had passed over, that's why we call it Passover, over the houses of the Israelites, and they were spared. Now the Egyptians couldn't get rid of the Hebrews quick enough, and so Moses and his people, Moses and his people prepared to leave Egypt. All right. Let's have a prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for these stories from the Bible. These stories, in their own way, they help to prepare us for Jesus. And we are just grateful for all that we can learn from them. And I'm grateful for these children and ask that you would be with them and help them. And may their animals always be safe. Amen. Right? There you go. You can go on downstairs now.